They praised his fists, but never understood his heart. They cheered for his victories in the ring, but few asked what made him fight beyond the spotlight. He floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee. Yet in the silence between each round, he listened for something greater than applause, something eternal. Something eternal. Long before the world crowned him the greatest boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali had begun a journey that would shake not just the world of sports, but his own soul. This wasn't about belts or glory. This was about truth, and when truth knocked, he didn't duck. He opened the door and embraced it with the same courage he showed every time he stepped into the ring. Because for Ali, the greatest fight wasn't in front of a crowd. It was the battle within. Born Cassius, Marcellus Clay Jr. in Louisville, Kentucky. Ali's early life was like many American boys of the era, marked by segregation, struggle, and the search for identity in a world that often tried to deny it. Boxing became his sanctuary, his way out. But as the fists flew and the world started to notice, Ali found that fame didn't feed the soul. The headlines didn't answer his questions. Why was he here? Why was he here? What was his purpose? Who was he? Beyond the name, beyond the fame. It was during these moments of solitude that his heart began to whisper louder than the roar of any stadium. He started questioning the faith he was born into. Not with rebellion, but with sincerity. He wanted a connection to God that felt real, personal, and powerful. And in the midst of his rise, he encountered something that stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't an opponent. It was a message that would change the course of his life forever. The message of Islam. Ali didn't come to Islam looking for a religion. He came searching for identity, for justice, for truth, He saw a community of black men standing strong, united, unashamed of who they were. The Nation of Islam, led at the time by Elijah Muhammad, spoke with boldness about pride, empowerment, and the dignity of black people. For a young man who had been taught by the world that his skin was a curse, the message was liberating. Here was a place was Coitin was a place that called him brother. Here was a faith that called him equal. But it wasn't easy. The world wasn't ready for a black man who didn't just win in the ring. But also refused to bow outside it. When he first declared his new name, Muhammad Ali, many refused to honor it. Reporters kept calling him Clay. Commentators dismissed him. Even fans turned away. But Ali didn't flinch. Cassius Clay was my slave name, he said. I didn't choose it, and I don't want it. I am Muhammad Ali, a free man. His conversion to Islam wasn't just a personal transformation. It was a bold, public stand in the face of racism, prejudice, and ignorance. He wasn't just changing names. He was changing narratives at a time when, at a time when America was still struggling with the scars of segregation. Ali was unapologetically declaring that his faith gave him strength, gave him purpose, and gave him peace. But the journey didn't stop there. As Ali matured, his understanding of Islam deepened. He moved from the ideology of the Nation of Islam to mainstream Sunni Islam. Embracing its core teachings of submission to the one God, Allah, and the message of peace, mercy, and justice that came with it. The more he studied, the more he fell in love, not just with the rituals, but with the rhythm of a life dedicated to serving God. Islam wasn't a religion he wore like a belt. It was the foundation of his being. It became the compass that guided his decisions, the armor that protected his heart, and the light that helped him walk through the darkest times, even when the world turned on him, when he refused to be drafted into the Vietnam War. Citing his religious beliefs, Ali stood firm. They stripped him of his titles. They took away his license. But they couldn't take away his soul. I ain't got no quarrel with them, Viet Cong, he said. No Viet Cong ever called. De wanneer Hans Preet sen kolsd higher called me de Fors air. The words echoed across a nation divided, and suddenly this man, who had once been seen only as a brash boxer, became a symbol of conscience, of resistance, of unwavering faith. And through it all, Islam was his anchor. When the accolades faded and the body began to tremble from Parkins' nens, herdical flyaker than Henze. He held onto his prayer beads when his voice weakened, his faith grew louder, when the lights dimmed and the cameras turned away. Muhammad Ali still rose before dawn to bow, his head in prayer, not because anyone was watching, but because he knew who he was praying to. In interviews, he would say it plainly. Everything I do now, I do for God. He spoke of the afterlife not with fear, but with hope. He said, this life was just a preparation ground, a test, a chance to earn something far greater than a championship belt. Eternal. Paradise, he once said. This life is nothing compared to the next. The real reward is in the hereafter. That's what I'm working for. That's what I'm working for. Ali's faith was not loud in theatrics. It was loud in consistency. He gave to charity, spoke on behalf of the voiceless, visited hospitals, and used his fame to build bridges. Whether he was traveling to Africa, Asia, or the Middle East, people saw not just the champion, but the believer. He didn't just carry Islam. He embodied it. Humility, courage, patience, and mercy. It wasn't just the Muhammad Ali show. It was the legacy of a servant of God, and perhaps the most powerful moment came near the end, when asked what he wanted people to remember him by. He didn't talk about his titles. He didn't brag about his fights. He simply said, I want them to say, I tried to help people. That I stood up for truth. That I lived my life trying to please God. The world knew him as the greatest boxer. But in his heart, he was simply a man who found peace in the words, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And when the final bell rang, and the world fell silent, Muhammad. Ali didn't leave as just a champion of the ring. He left as a servant of God, a soul who found his purpose not in the applause of men, but in the peace of submission to the one who never nistadid of Vufridan, peace of submission to the one who never needed a referee to declare the winner.